Now available in paperback and e-readers. John Haynes, 1987. Learn lessons about life and teenage love in the 1980s in this coming-of-age John Haynes story. Get your copy of John Haynes, 1987 in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. A 13-year-old boy lost his life last Friday when he was stabbed by a 14-year-old on a Staten Island bus.
A 13-year-old boy is stabbed and killed on an MTA bus this afternoon, and tonight a 14-year-old is in custody. CBS 2's Allie Bauman reports from Eltingville in Staten Island.
There was chaos aboard this MTA bus on Staten Island Friday. Police say a 13-year-old boy was on board around 2:30 p.m. As the bus neared Highland Boulevard and Littlefield Avenue, another teenager got on.
Witnesses state there's an argument on a bus, a knife is produced, and gang signs were being shown back and forth.
We spoke to one witness who did not want to show his face for fear of his own safety.
They started yelling at each other. I guess they knew each other, had beef or something. And he walked over and pulled a knife out of his pocket and grabbed him and started stabbing him.
Police say the 13-year-old was stabbed in the chest.
He screamed, help, somebody call the cops, I can't breathe.
The assailant took off running.
He was very fidgety and he kept staring back down and looking all around and dipping. Then he made a left.
Police say two passers-by, a state environmental conservation officer and a retired NYPD sergeant, tracked the 14-year-old suspect down before police arrived.
The retired sergeant starts to follow the male who did the stabbing. At this time, another witness points him out and says, this person just stabbed somebody, and the sergeant effects the arrest.
The victim was rushed to the hospital, where he succumbed to his injuries. Investigators scoured the scene for evidence Friday and are reviewing video from onboard cameras. The MTA says the bus driver is traumatized.
He's broken up right now. From what he experienced.
This is one of the safest neighborhoods. I've never seen anything like this go on.
Police believe the motive for this stabbing may be gang-related. In the Eltingville section of Staten Island, Allie Bauman, CBS 2 News.
Now, in this alleged incident, 13-year-old Silas Ular was riding a bus home from his junior high school, IS-7, and as he was on this crowded bus, it stopped and a 14-year-old boy from the same junior high school, IS-7, decided to get on the bus to go home as well. And as these boys were on their way home, the 14-year-old decided to confront Silas Ular and allegedly pulled out a knife in front of all of the passengers on the bus. And after pulling out the knife in front of all of the passengers on the bus, this is where the 14-year-old allegedly went out and confronted Silas Ular with this weapon. And as he was confronting him with the weapon, both boys began flashing gang signs. And after they flashed gang signs, they continued to escalate their argument to the point where the 14-year-old allegedly wound up stabbing Silas Ular, who, after being stabbed, wound up collapsing in the back of the bus, and the 14-year-old then fled the bus, looking to escape, throwing the knife away, hoping to discard the evidence allegedly. However, he was tracked down by a former NYPD officer and another individual and held for the police until he was arrested. Now, the NYPD here in New York see the stabbing of 13-year-old Silas Ular as an isolated incident, but when I take a critical examination of the alleged death of Silas Ular, it fits the pattern and profile for beta males that I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis. And it's clear to me that this entire incident fits the chapter that I wrote in The Man Crisis called Gangs and the Man Crisis. And this confrontation between Silas Ular and this 14-year-old is what happens when you have two boys who don't have a father in their lives, and you don't have a collective of men running their community. Because the only reason why you have gang violence like this is when there are no fathers in the home to establish order and structure in their homes, and when there is no collective of fathers to be the men who establish a standard for living in their community and establish a standard for the quality of life in their communities. Now, over the last 60 years, as the feminist movement has been going on, there has been this idea that we don't need to have a man or a collective of men in a community, and many of these feminists pushed this idea for over 60 years, telling a lot of women they could go out here and raise a boy to become a man, not understanding that if there are no men in the community, this has a direct impact on how these boys are going to be raised. Now, the reason why you get gangs in communities is because there are no men to be the ones as a collective to set order in that community, and with there being no men to assert their male authority and be able to assert order in a community, that community winds up with a power void. And that power void winds up becoming filled by institutions and individuals who are subversive. And these subversive individuals, what they do is go out here and grab the power that fathers would have over their homes and over their communities as a collective. Because when you have no fathers in the home to assert the power that God has given them as dominion over the earth, and assert the power that God has given them as men to control their communities, what happens is you get subversives who come in and again look to take that power and look to take control over that community. And these individuals, what they do is look to influence the young boys. And as they look to influence the young boys, many of these boys, because they don't have a father in their lives or a collective of men to provide them a model of manhood, start seeing these subversive individuals as the ones who have power, and they start seeing these individuals as the ones who have authority to get things done in the community that their mothers cannot do. And this is what lays the foundation for the formation of gangs inside of communities. What happens is because there are no men in the community to set any sort of order or establish any sort of standard for the family or assert any sort of authority over the males. What happens is the boys don't learn what they need to become men. No, what they learn to do is follow the written and unwritten social rules of this whole group run by the subversives. And as they follow the subversives, they believe that they're on the road to manhood. However, these males are actually on the road to becoming men in crisis. Now, when it comes to the whole concept of gangs, many of these guys in the gangs believe that they are being a part of a group that will allow them to become a part of a family. And what they think that they're being a part of is a place where they can actually actualize their natural masculinity and manhood. But what they're being taught is a miseducation in manhood by a man who doesn't even know how to be a man himself. Many of the individuals who organize these gangs, they are males who never understood what it meant to be a man because they never had a father in their lives. Moreover, they never had a collective of men teach them how to operate as a man or model manhood for them. So they take ideals that are given to them by institutions like the prison system, like the government, and like mainstream media, and they buy into these ideals, not understanding these are false concepts of manhood and false social constructs of manhood created by subversive institutions in order to undermine the natural masculinity that God wants men to learn from their fathers. And as a result, these males learn what is called hyper-masculinity, where they put on a facade of toughness in order to appear that they are strong on the outside, but they are actually weak on the inside. And the hyper-masculine facade has them believing that they need to appear to be tough and bad outside on the street, and has them running around with this whole veneer of toughness. But this veneer of toughness is a facade that usually crumbles whenever these individuals run into any sort of actual authority figure, such as a law enforcement officer. Now, in this case on this Staten Island bus, Silas Ular basically was riding this bus on his way home from school. And as he was riding this bus on his way home from school, because he didn't have a father in his life to teach him critical thinking or problem solving, what happened is when his 14-year-old got on the bus with him, this is where both of these boys started to participate in this hyper-masculine behavior, because there was no men to teach them how to go out here and be able to navigate life in the world. And as they got on this bus, this is where the beta male came out of both of them, and they started acting physically like a man with the emotions of a woman. Because when you have a beta male, what happens is when they see somebody they disagree with, they start getting loud and argumentative like a female, and going into a back and forth without ever thinking critically about more important things like their health, their safety, or their freedom. And they also don't think about other things, like when you are on a public bus, there are cameras on the bus to record the entire incident. And as both of these boys continue to argue, the 14-year-old pulled out a weapon, not understanding that, again, you are on a bus with a lot of witnesses. And when you're on a bus with a lot of witnesses, they can basically identify you as a perpetrator. But he wasn't thinking about that, because he was so caught up in his feelings about this boy who was possibly from another gang or another set, or he was just somebody that was pushing against the gang. And because he felt so-called disrespected, he decided to so-called take his respect in the hyper-masculine fashion by trying to show off this weapon to assert his power, not understanding that as he was looking to assert his power, ironically, he was taking actions that would lead to him basically losing more important things, like his intangibles of manhood, like his freedom, and most importantly, again, his dignity. Going out here and taking out this weapon, basically, this guy thought he was putting the other boy in jeopardy, but he was actually putting himself in jeopardy. And he was doing this because, again, he was caught up in his feelings the same way beta males usually get caught up in their feelings. Again, what's dangerous about beta males who are in gangs is, again, they have the feelings of a woman, but they have the strength of a man. And that is a dangerous combination, especially when males like this start arguing back and forth. When they start arguing back and forth like this is where their emotions get the better of them, and they act on their impulses. And once they act on those impulses, they participate in behavior that eventually they wind up regretting. And that's what this 14-year-old did as he allegedly stabbed 13-year-old Silas Ular. He was looking to get back at a kid from another possible gang, but as he looked to go out here and try to show out for his crew, what he didn't see was that he basically destroyed his life at 14 years old. Now, he thought he would be able to run off that Staten Island bus into the street and fade into the street like he possibly saw in many of the hood movies or heard from many of the stories that gang members told him. However, there was a retired police officer on that bus who was able to track him with the help of another individual, and this 14-year-old basically wound up with his life becoming completely destroyed at that point, because as that retired police officer made that arrest, this male wound up going from being a boy going to school to a male who's going to become a man in crisis. And he's going to become a man in crisis as they bring him into the juvenile justice system. And as he's brought into the juvenile justice system for the alleged murder that took place, which was video recorded on a bus and witnessed by dozens of passengers, this male is on the road to going to jail, possibly for a good chunk of the rest of his life, where he will be put into that in that juvenile justice system, and his life will just completely change, because as he was out here running tough in these streets, he is going to wind up getting broken down by the juvie versions of Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles, and there won't be any set to protect him inside of that penitentiary. No, there won't be any set, and he's going to learn that all of the stuff that he had been programmed as related to gangs, as related to the streets, was all a bunch of BS. Because while many of these so-called gang members oftentimes talk about the code of the streets, many of these same guys don't really honor their own code at all. And in many cases, these guys, whenever they see one of their guys winding up, jamming themselves up, they are quick to abandon that individual, and they're quick to abandon that individual because these subversive individuals really aren't loyal to anyone. No, they are only out to get what they want for themselves, and this is why you need a collective of men to protect your community from these gang members, and because they will go out here and program your kids to believe that they can go out here and be these kind of gangsters. But what they don't see is that these subversives have no interest in helping your children become healthy adult men and women. No, it's all about going out here and promoting an ideology that allows them to profit at your children's expense and get them caught up in an ideology that will make it where they will never get a chance to actualize their potential. Now, with these gangs, again, they always come into communities where there are no men there, and when there are no men there to establish a standard for their families, this is where these individuals come in and start promoting their idea. And this is why it's important to have a father in the home, because a father is going to set a standard for his children. Moreover, a father is going to set an example for his sons of manhood and provide them with opportunities to go out here and learn what it means to be a man, whether they take them to the job or they assign them things to do like the late Joe Jackson used to do for his children. What they are going to do is provide order and structure for the sons so that they can be focused on what it means to be a man and the tasks required of a man in the world. That is what a father is going to do as an individual, and he's going to establish his house rules. And as he establishes his house rules, he is going to set boundaries for his son as related to his behavior. And when that boy reaches adolescence, like 13-year-old Silas Ular has done, when he starts to push past those boundaries, what the father is going to do is push back on that boy and show him where the line is. And this is where the boy will learn how to respect male authority and male authority figures, because the father has asserted authority, and that authority was taught to him by his mother at an early age. So the father is important to prevent a boy from getting into a gang, and a collective of men in a community make it where there is no place for the subversives who want to create gangs to get any sort of foothold, because when you have a collective of men, that collective of men is going to establish a standard for their community, and as their standard, they're going to insist that their sons go out here and meet the standards of the community they have established, and they're going to insist that their sons follow their rules. And if those boys don't want to follow the rules of their home, that's when the father will tell the son that he needs to, if he wants to go out here and make his own rules and wants to try to be his own man, then he's got to pack up his stuff and get out of his house. That is what a father's going to do, because he's gone out here and built his home, and as the leader of his home, he is not looking to follow behind any other man. No, he's set up his home to meet his standard as related to his home. And many God-centered men, when they go out here, they want their home to establish to meet the order of God, and they don't want any males coming in here with any sort of subversive stuff. So if those males want to go out here and push back on the father will again insist that that boy pack up his stuff, because if you want to follow your own rules, then you want to be your own man, and you can be your own man outside of this man's home. And when you have a collective community of men, what they're going to do is say, no, this dude is not meeting our standard, so he's not coming into our community with this. And that is what collectives of men do. They say, no, we are the men who built this community. We are the men who are the ones who are the heads of household. And as a collective of men who built the community and are the heads of household, we are not letting you bring any of this gang crap into our community. And this is how gangs are stopped in many suburban communities and many communities out here in other cities where there are fathers, there are no gangs, because no man who goes out here and puts in work to build his community is going to allow any sort of subversive individual to come in his community and undermine his leadership, undermine his authority, undermine his order, because he understands that these subversive individuals are not going to look to act in his best interest. No, he understands that if this person is coming through the back door, they are going to look to try to undermine everything they have worked for. And this is why, again, a father is important, because you don't need expensive government programs to stop gangs. No, the only thing you need to stop gangs are fathers, because a father is the one who, again, asserts the order. But many people over the last 60 years don't know this at all, because we have had fathers taken out of the home, because many women bought into feminism, and as they bought into feminism, they thought they could raise a boy to become a man. But all they did was leave a boy vulnerable, and they left him vulnerable to these subversive individuals. And these subversive individuals are basically, some of them come from corporate America, some come from Madison Avenue in Hollywood, and some even come from the government. And they are the ones who want the gangs in inner city communities, and they want them in inner city communities because they don't want to see young black males go out here and be able to compete in the economy by going out here and finishing school, going out here and learning different skills and trades. So what they do is go out here and bring in these agents to go out here and form these gangs where there are no fathers, and have these boys misled into believing this is a road to manhood. However, it is a road to prison. And this is the road that many young boys like Silas Ular wind up on in junior high school when a boy is most vulnerable, because a boy who is in adolescence, this is where a boy needs a father more than any time in his life, because this is the time that the boy is in puberty. His body is changing, and as his body is changing and his whole life is changing, this is where he needs a man to provide hard structure and order for him to understand the concepts of male authority and male authority figures, and why it's important to follow male authority figures, and why he needs to follow the structures of male authority, because this is core to his male survival. Because the one thing many boys don't get to understand is that the world works differently for a boy than it does a girl, and what is expected of a man is completely different than what is expected of a woman. So a boy has to get that structure from his father early on, and he has to see manhood modeled for men that look just like him, so he can understand how the world works differently for men than it does for women. And when a boy does not have a father there or a collective of men to model manhood for him, what he does is he goes and starts identifying with these subversives. And as he starts to identify with the subversives, he starts to believe that this is the ideal for manhood. And this is how many boys wind up getting caught up in gangs, because they don't see any men who look like them on jobs. They don't see any men that look like them building businesses. They don't see any men in their communities out here asserting their authority or asserting order. And the only males they see with power are the subversive individuals who have been given power by the institutions of white supremacy. Because what most people don't get is that a gang is not an institution of its own. No, it is a part of the irregular forces of white supremacy, and it is funded by white supremacy to undermine any black individual and keep them from competing in the economic marketplace. The whole point of the gang is designed to sabotage a young boy before he can become a man and enter into the job market or enter into the world of business. And it's designed to go out here and eliminate black male competition, either by having those individuals winding up getting killed in the street, or getting addicted to drugs, or winding up inside of the criminal justice system, where they will remain for the rest of their lives. This is all designed to eliminate male competition, and this is how a boy winds up on the road to becoming a man in crisis. And sadly, that's what happened to Silas Ular. And the story really hit me home, because when I was in IS 148 myself, I ran into many types of individuals like this. And when I was at Park West High School, I ran into more individuals like this. And because of the way I was raised, I was understanding I needed to stay away from these individuals, because these individuals were on a road to their destruction. Many of these guys thought they were cool. Many of the girls would think that these guys were cool. And again, because they were caught up in social currency, they weren't seeing the clear and present danger that these individuals were in. And sadly, a lot of guys possibly wound up on the road to prison, or the road to becoming baby daddies, or just tragic overall roads. And again, this is what happens when there are no fathers in the community. And over the last 60 years, people, they just skirt around the gang situation. They don't really want to talk about it overall. They don't want to talk about how, again, they are irregular forces of white supremacy. These individuals just basically doing the dirty work of the white supremacist, and doing the dirty work that many of the racists don't want to do, because that would show their hands. And again, looking to recruit these young boys and put them on the road to becoming men in crisis by coercion, by bullying, again, using terror to terrorize these individuals into submission, but they wouldn't be able to do this if there was fathers in the community, because again, like I stated before, where there are fathers, there are no gangs, and when there are collectives of men running their community, you have boys on the road to becoming men and not on the road to becoming men in crisis and winding up where they're having to bury their children before they wind up leaving this world. Now, if you want to learn more about what leads to boys winding up on a dysfunctional road to self-destruction and a way to prevent it, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, Google Play, and Barnes & Noble. And if you want to see me make more videos about The Man Crisis, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today.
Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.